1960, 21 March, Women's Rights Day.
Welcome to the Sadtu Informer. This is your girl Ntabi coming to you live from the Sadtu studio. Today in studio, I'm not flying solo. I have my co-host with me, Mr. Wilson Mako.
Thanks, Ntabi. Greetings to you viewers.
As Sadtu commemorates Human Rights Month, March 2022, we are reinforcing our commitment to the Bill of Rights as enshrined in our Constitution. The theme for this year's Human Rights Month is the year of unity and renewal, protecting and preserving our human rights gains.
When modern era South Africa held its first democratic elections, with Nelson Mandela elected as its first democratic president, Human Rights Day was officially proclaimed a public holiday. Today, South Africa's human rights constitution is seen as one of the most progressive in the world.
Born from the terrible 1960 Sharpeville massacre and the struggle against apartheid, Human Rights Day is both a celebration of human rights of all citizens and a solemn remembrance of the suffering and sacrifice necessary to secure them. This day marked an affirmation by ordinary people rising in unison to proclaim their rights. It became an iconic date in our country's history. Today, we commemorate Human Rights Day as a reminder of our rights and the cost paid for our treasured human rights.
On this Human Rights Day, South African educators and learners were asked to reflect on their rights, irrespective of race, gender, religion, or sexual orientation. Human rights apply to everyone equally.
South Africa's first democratic elections were held on 27 April 1994.
This meant that for the first time, people of all races could vote.
On the same day in 1997, the new constitution took effect and guaranteed human rights.
Everyone has the right to a basic education, including adult basic education, and to further education, healthcare, food, water, and social services. Everyone has the right to have access to healthcare services, including reproductive health care, sufficient food and water, and social security, including if they're unable to support themselves and their dependents, appropriate social assistance.
Everyone has inherent dignity and the right to have their dignity respected.
The right to equality. This right is the most violated one in South Africa. According to a 2017 report by South African Human Rights Commission, the right states that everyone is equal and must be treated equally. No one has the right to discriminate against you based on your race, gender, sex, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, conscious belief, culture, language, or birth, among others.
Everyone has the right to life. Nobody, not even the state, can take a life away. This means that no one can be sentenced to death by the courts.
Freedom, security. This means that no one can be put in prison without good reason, be detained without trial, be tortured in any way, or be treated or punishment in a cruel, inhuman, or degrading way. It means that all humans have a right to be free from all forms of violence from either public or private sources, arrested, detained, and uncaused persons. Any arrested person has a right to a lawyer and cannot be forced to speak or to make a confession. Prisoners must be kept in proper living conditions and may have visitors from family members.
Citizenship. No one South African citizenship can be taken away from them.
Freedom and expression. South Africans have the freedom to write, to say, to print what they want, but that right must never violate anyone else's right in any way.
Slavery, servitude, and forced labor. You have a right to choose who you want to work for and the kind of job you do. And you must be paid for your job. No one can be forced to work for someone else.
No one, not even the government, has the right to search your house or property, or even your position seized without following the correct legal channels. The government cannot infringe on the privacy of your communication.
This includes opening your mails or listening to your calls.
Freedom of association. Everyone has a right to associate with anyone they want to associate with. This means people have a right to associate with a trade union, a political party, or any other club, including religious denomination and organization, fraternities, and sport clubs.
Housing. Everyone has the right to have access to adequate housing. The government cannot take your house away from you or evict you from your home if you own it. Children. All children have the right to parental care, shelter, and food. Children may not be neglected or abused or forced to work.
Every citizen has the right to form a political party. Every citizen can stand for public office and, if elected, to hold office. 1960, 21 March, Human Rights Day. The police killed 69 people at Sharpeville who were participating in a protest against past laws.
This holiday is intended to remind the people of South Africa of their rights and ensure that such abuses never happen.
Preventing learners under the age of 15 years from accessing education is deemed a criminal offense in South African law. In essence, every child has the right to go to school and learn.
May God protect our people. Nkosi singelele Africa. Morena boloka setjhaba sa yeso. God sien South Africa. God bless South Africa. Muzimu fatuteza Africa. Hosi katekisa Africa. One nation, one constitution.
We, the people of South Africa, believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. We therefore adopt this constitution as the supreme law of the Republic.
Nevertheless, what rights does everyone have in South Africa? The Bill of Rights? What does it say? What does it mean?
Comrades, today as Sadtu, we want to join the country in commemorating Human Rights Day. This day provides us with an opportunity to reflect how far we have come in the promotion and protection of human rights in our country. But it's also a day that we want to celebrate education as a human right. Internationally, there has been a general consensus that the right to education is a fundamental human right to everyone. And we agree that education indeed is a human right because it reduces inequality in society. Education is an enabler. It is one of the most powerful tools to improve one's life expectancy and to ensure the development of a fully rounded human being. So the right to education is crucial for the exercise of other human rights. In South Africa, education as a human right is enshrined in our constitution. Our constitution in section 29 clearly says that everyone has a right to basic education. But it's important for us today to pause and reflect on how far have we come as a country to ensure that education as a fundamental human right is realized for every child in this country. As a starting point, I think what we need to do is to acknowledge that as a country we have made significant progress in realizing the right to education. We did this through the introduction of a number of policies and programs that really promotes and protects the right to education. So what have we achieved? We have increased access to education. We increased access to learner transport to cater for learners coming from townships to rural areas. We've introduced a nutrition program. We have narrowed the gender gap for girls and women. We have ensured that ECD becomes compulsory for every child in South Africa. We've increased access of education for learners with disabilities. And this is just a few of our achievements. But while we are celebrating the progress that we've made, as a country we are found wanting in a number of areas when it comes to the provision of quality education. One of such areas is safety. The safety and security of our learners, because the right to quality education includes having schools where learners are safe and secure so that they are in an environment that is conducive for teaching and learning. And so When we have unsafe schools, what we're actually doing is we're violating the learners' human rights and their right to education. Another area for improvement is the violence in our schools, and in particular, our school-related gender-based violence and how this impacts on the human rights of learners. But we also must give credit to the government for the steps that they've taken to curb the violence in our South African schools. We've abolished corporal punishment. In fact, we've made it a criminal offense. We have a very strong legal framework that ensures and places the responsibility to protect learners from school-related gender-based violence on the government. But unfortunately, despite all of these interventions, the challenge of unsafe schools and school-related gender-based violence are still very prevalent. So this then shows that there is a need for us to re-examine existing policies and our legal frameworks to ensure that we create a safe learning environment that enhances the right to education. As a union, we are playing our role in ensuring that we are actively speaking out against violence in schools and in particular school-related gender-based violence. We are working with our communities to ensure that we tackle gender-based violence in schools with a view of providing a safe environment for all learners and teachers. Sadtu is also addressing teachers at all the union structures on the impact of school-related gender-based violence, and thus promoting safe schools through our campaign, I Am a School Fan. And this I Am a School Fan actually aims to make our schools safe havens, to stop violence in schools and community, to promote access to education for all, and by providing enabling factors to make school environment suitable for learning and teaching. And what we also need to do is we need to explore whether we have enabling conditions for the delivery of quality education in our country. And what we found through research and also through the experiences of our members is that the majority of learners are being taught in conditions that seriously undermines the right to education as provided in the Bill of Rights. So the right to quality education includes a school where learners have adequate infrastructure and facilities. But sadly, in our education system, it is characterized by poor infrastructure. And one of the key infrastructure issues is poor sanitation. But it's also a lack of running water, which then compromises not just learners' right to education, but also their health, their privacy, and their dignity. We also need to look at the issue of overcrowded classrooms and how that impacts on the learner's ability to learn effectively. We need to look at the lack of or insufficient resources, the lack of LTSM to meet the requirements for a quality education. We also need to look at our unequal education system and how our unequal education system hampers access to education and perpetuates poverty and inequality. And it is always the poorest, most disadvantaged learners being the hardest hit by the inequality. The playing fields must be leveled. We need to reduce disparities in order to enhance equal opportunities towards the right to education. These are just a few of the issues that we've highlighted that really compromise the quality of education available for the majority of learners and impacts on their right to education as a fundamental human right. As Sadtu, we acknowledge that the key to quality public education relies on all stakeholders working together. Education cannot be the responsibility of teachers alone. Education is a societal issue. We must ensure that we need to get the whole nation involved. On this Human Rights Day, we urge everyone to play their role in ensuring that the right to education is a reality for every child in the country. As a union, we will continue to monitor the implementation of policies that promotes the right to education for all children in South Africa. We will continue to advocate for the right to education. We will continue to create awareness. We will continue towards the elimination of inequalities and disparities in education. We will continue to work towards stopping privatization and its impact on the right to education, and we will continuously call for adequate financing of education. We will use our I Am a School fan campaign to call on all teachers, parents, learners and communities to unite behind quality public education as a basic human right. Amandla.
The Democratic Government declared 21st of March Human Rights Day to commemorate and honor those who fought for our liberation and the rights we enjoy today. Sadtu is calling all South Africans to use Human Rights Month to foster greater social cohesion, nation building and shared national identity. It is our duty as a nation to combat scourges such as gender-based violence and femicide, racism and all related intolerances which are undermining our human rights culture.
As we wrap it up, experience has taught us that whether we are at our workplace, within communities, at school, or with our partners and children, we need to demonstrate the kind of responsibility that we would like to see in our country's future. We must remain vigilant and report abuse and cruelty such as human trafficking, child labor, violence against women, children, and the aged and other vulnerable groupings of people. Thank you for tuning in into the Sadtu Informer. This is your girl Tavi, live from Matthew Koniwe House.
From me, Wilson Mako, that's all.
See you next time.